Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
Being that it's a new year, why don't we start this week's episode off with a little bit of self-reflection. If you're an owner doctor, I want you to do a brief yet honest assessment of your dental practice and answer this question. Am I happy, I meaning you, am I happy with the direction my practice is headed? All right. If you answered this with an overwhelmingly enthusiastic yes with an exclamation point, well, very well done. That's great. Now, if you answered with anywhere from a weaker yes to a maybe or a no, I want to give you one follow-up question. Do you have an effective, trained, and fully functioning office manager? Now, I can't hear your answer, obviously, but if I had to put money on it, I would bet that you answered no to that question. Why? Well, there's a reason why one of the first steps an MGE client does when they get on the MGE Power Program is to appoint an office manager. There's also a reason why I've done 5, now 6, episodes of Dental Business RX covering the importance and duties of an office manager, as well as other aspects of the job. And this reason is pretty simple. Uniformly, our most successful clients all have stable, functional, and trained office managers. And by uniformly, I mean 100%. There's an absolute causal relationship between a stably successful practice. I use that word stably because you can have a practice that has a great month. I'm saying stably successful and a successful office manager. You could try to work around it, hope that AI is going to solve it, which it's not going to. You can do whatever. And experience, just my experience, as well as some new data I just found, has proven again and again that a good office manager equals a successful practice. And if you're in the boat where another year has gone by without having a functional, productive manager, I want to point something out. You don't have unlimited time to practice. Everything, life, practice, your career, etc., has an expiration date. And every year that passes that you're not moving towards your personal, professional, and financial goals that you have for your practice can never be recovered. Once time is gone, it is gone forever. So I don't know how much stronger I could say this, but here goes. If you're an owner dentist, your long-term business, personal, and financial goals that materially affect you, your family, and your team are directly tied to your ability to find and create a functioning, productive manager to run your business. This is important. It's as important as anything you're doing in your business. To that end, the only thing I'd rank higher than this would be patient care and clinical quality in importance. So it's with that in mind that I'm doing this week's episode, or if you like, you can call it my appeal to please, please, please pay attention to this. We're going to look at what this office manager position actually is in a new unit at a time and why it's so important. And then we're going to look at what and who we're looking for when we're posting an office manager. I also have a handy checklist you can download for your office manager to help them run the practice on a day-to-day basis. The idea here being that if you don't have an OM or you don't really have the position fleshed out in your practice, this will help you do it, as well as know exactly who you are looking to fill it. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host, and here we are again in 2026 talking about office managers. And just as an aside, what got me on this again as such an important topic was a recent study we did here at MGE. So you probably know we do the MGE Power Program. What is the Power Program? It's training for the doctor and the manager on every aspect of practice management. It's quite lengthy. It's about 78 days of training for the doc and a manager, covering sales, organization, stat management, executive skills, etc., financial management. I'm not going to go through all of it here on the podcast, but it's a lot. And I have a link to it on the episode webpage if you want to check it out. Now, the reason I bring this up is what happens is a client and their manager will go through the training, and at the end of the Power Program, you do something called the executive internship. This is where we make sure that everything's implemented and we hone some of your skills and clean up anything that you need to be cleaned up on, etc., right? So theoretically, a client could get onto their executive internship, and this happens. It's a very small percentage of clients this happens to, but it happens. They get onto their executive internship and they don't immediately graduate because there's things that we have to fix. So we did a study of this small percentage of clients who weren't graduating to figure out, what's going on. You want to be self-corrective, just like you would do in your practice. 1-for-1, uniformly, every single one of these clients that were having trouble graduating due to lack of implementation or some stat issue or something like this did not have a stable, productive, functioning manager. Some had some manager start training and not finish. Some couldn't find a manager. Somebody picked a candidate that didn't work out, etc. But that was the uniform answer in every single case as to why these guys weren't getting through the program. Again, it's not a lot of the clients that get on. It's a very small percentage. But of that small percentage, every single one did not have a manager, which makes sense because the whole theory of having a manager, and this is where it gets a bit misunderstood, is the person doing the majority of your implementation is your manager. And this sort of evolves from because I can say office manager, and depending on who you are, that could mean something different. I mean, that doesn't happen with a dental assistant or a dental hygienist. If I say dental assistant, we know what that means. I mean, you might have one who has more skills than another. You might have an EFTA, expanded functions dental assistant. If I say dental hygienist, we know what that is. If I say associate doctor, we know what that is. But when I say office manager, someone might be thinking office manager is the person who's the senior person at the front desk, or it's their bookkeeper, or it's the person at the front desk who has the most experience. There's no uniform definition of what an office manager is. So I've asked people if they have an office manager. They go, sure, and it's really they're part-time or they're remote. I don't know how somebody could be a remote office manager, especially in a dental environment. That makes no sense to me. So I'm going to start off with how we define one. What is an office manager? For us, the office manager is the person running the business. If you wanted to compare it to the business world, they're your chief operating officer. They run the day-to-day of the business. Maybe the doctor is the owner/CEO. The office manager is the COO. They run the business. Now, if you're an owner doctor and you're chair side, you see why this becomes super, super important. If you're chair side, number one, you're being relied upon to be the primary source of production and revenue for the business. That's what you're doing. You're also involved in the sales process. You don't have time. You don't have the bandwidth if you're doing a good job at clinical and sales to actually run your business. That's why you have a manager. And 90% of your day is spent in front of a patient or in a patient's mouth. So the way we organize it is we have somebody find an excellent manager. They get trained. The manager could run the business, and the doctor and the manager interface on a regular basis as a team to get things done. The doctor has certain things they want done. The manager is the execution arm. They're the one who's actually doing it. And this is a high-level person. You could leave town, assuming that clinical oversight continued. Say you had an associate in place and you somehow made sure the clinical stayed good. You could theoretically leave town for a month. The manager should be able to run your business and keep the business functioning well. That's the idea. You could leave your business with this person, assuming you perform clinical oversight, and they can run it. This manager is competent. They're productive. They can get things done. If an employee can't do something, the manager can if they have to in a pinch. They run the staff. They work with the doctor, etc. So what we're looking for is an executive. Now, executives don't grow on trees. I love that saying because, really all that grows on trees is leaves and fruit and nuts. So, but anyway, executives don't grow on trees. You have to make them, but they have to have the basic raw qualities in place. You can't make everybody an executive. Some people have the raw material or raw qualities to become one, and others are not as prone to becoming a good executive. So we're looking for, since we're hiring for this position, we're looking for somebody who's potentially a good executive. Now, I want to start with what am I not looking for? Because I see people, they'll go into the office manager search and they'll go, okay, I'm looking for this, this, and this. And the qualities that they're looking for have nothing to do with whether the person is going to make it as a manager or not. Now, let's just throw a few out there. First one for me is age. I've seen young managers. I've seen older managers. Doesn't matter to me how old they are. They could be 25, they could be 55. Really doesn't matter to me. If a client is going to be picking up a person as their manager, they have to meet other qualifications, obviously. But age is not a factor. They have to be able to train, travel, etc. So as long as they're willing to work for the doc for a while and they've got that type of an agreement, their age is really not material. Next thing, and this may be controversial, is their schooling. Whether they have a master's or a doctorate or a bachelor's, again, not super important to me. I know some excellent office managers that just have a high school diploma and some that have masters. Those two things, especially what if they have a bachelor's in history? I mean, what difference is that going to make? So they can tell you, what year in the Middle Ages X, Y, and Z happened. That is immaterial. If anything, the one thing it proves is that they can dedicate themselves to getting an education, but you see a lot of people with bachelors these days. So the level of education, again, for me, if I'm posting a dental office manager, is not the most critical thing, because I've seen people run the gamut as far as educational quality. And then you get these kind of weird ideas. Well, a person has to be mature. What does that even mean? Like they're not a practical joker, that they wear adult clothes. Like, I don't know. You get people, they sort of inject weird ideas as to what makes a good manager and what doesn't. Obviously, if it's somebody that you, the owner doctor, is going to be working very closely with, you have to be able to get along with this person. That's kind of a deal breaker. If you're the owner of the business and you can't get along with your office manager, that's a problem. But those factors are not big deals to me. Right? Now, before I get into the qualities I would want a manager to have, let's take a look at where some of our clients have found what have turned out to be the best managers that have done the MGE program. Well, there's three basic areas, right? First one, and this may be something you have or have not looked at. I know some people haven't because there's an idea that it wouldn't work, but it actually works out great for our clients. But the first one is a family member. I've seen people pick a spouse, a cousin, a sister, a brother, a mother, a daughter, a son, etc. I can think of one client whose husband runs their practices. He used to be a bank manager. Think of another client who's actually been on the podcast before, Rushi Trivedi. Rushi came from Wall Street to run his wife's practice. He ended up working himself out of a job, putting other managers on post and getting them trained, and now he's no longer day-to-day in the practice at all. You see, and they have several large practices in New York. So finding a family member, again, the family member has to have the chops. They have to have the basic qualities, which I'll get into here in a second. But the one plus with a family member is they have skin in the game. They have skin in the game. If I had a practice and my wife was running the practice, she has skin in the game. She really has a lot invested in making sure this practice is successful. That does help. But then that being said, if I brought my wife in to run my practice and she wasn't a good manager, that wouldn't work. Sabri would be an awesome manager, by the way. But beside that point, they have to have the ability to do it, but this is a place that you can look. You might have a family member. We've had numbers of clients do this. We've had clients whose spouses have quit corporate America to come into their practice. Some spouses were already in the practice. Some spouses weren't working. I mean, it doesn't matter. But you might have a family member that could fit the bill. That's the first place. Second place that a client is most likely to find a manager is somebody who's already on the team. It might be your lead dental assistant. It might be somebody at the front. It might be your treatment coordinator. I've even seen hygienists turned into managers. But it's somebody who's already there. And the one plus of somebody who's already there is you already have an experiential track with this person, meaning you've seen them work, so you know that they are capable. Now, sure, they're not executives yet, but they have some basic capabilities that they've shown you that tell you, yeah, it's worth investing some time and effort into this person to turn them into manager. Now, if you don't have somebody, a family or a friend, and you don't have somebody currently on your team, a place that's often overlooked that I've actually seen to turn out to be successful, most people don't have to go this route, is your patient base, believe it or not. You might have somebody in your patient base that might be a viable candidate to be a manager. You've had some experience with these people. You might look through and say, oh, this person would be great. That's a possibility. Last point, we have those three areas, right? You got family on your team or one of your patients. Is if you can't find anybody there, you're going to have to bring in somebody from the outside. Now, you're going to have a few additional hoops to jump through if you bring in somebody from the outside to turn them into a manager, and it really depends on your current situation. The first thing I would want to know before I'm going to make somebody my official manager is, are they productive? That's important to me. I want to be sure that they're effective before I turn over parts of my business to them. right? So if I hired up someone off the street, I might have them be the treatment coordinator first. They might do some scheduling first. Let's see if they can do a good job. Even if they come in from another practice as the manager, I might still have them not give them the full reins and see what they're capable of before I give them the whole thing, because sure, maybe they have experience somewhere else, but they have zero experience with me. You also get into the politics of the situation a little bit. So let's say you've looked, there's nobody, no friends or family that are a possible candidate. There's nobody in your patient base. There's nobody in the practice you would elevate to manager. And then you bring somebody in from the outside and you go, okay, this is Gina or Paul, and they are the office manager. That can create weird dynamics with your current staff. So it's a little different if you bring that person in and you go, okay, they're going to be the treatment coordinator. Then they're just killing it as the treatment coordinator, and the staff, they see, wow, this person's really competent. Then you go, hey, we're elevating them to manager. That sometimes works a bit better because now they're not just a proven commodity to you, which is important, but they're also a proven commodity to the rest of the team, and they command a degree of respect at that point. But then again, if you have, let's say you have no staff or you have one or two staff, bringing in somebody and making them the manager sooner or later may not be that big of a deal because you don't have those politics to overcome. But I would want to at least see, before I made somebody my manager, that they're coming in cold. I have no experience with this person. I would want to see that they're capable before I would give them the reins. All right? So assuming I found a candidate or I have candidates that I can look at, and by the way, I did mention that I have that checklist because I'm going to get into what we're looking for when we're looking for a manager next. But before I forget, I do have a download called the Office Manager Daily Checklist. This is a checklist the office manager can use every day to help run the practice. If you want it, it's available on the episode webpage. You can download it for free. Just wanted to mention that before I forgot. So I can get a manager from any of those four sources I just mentioned. You know, the family, the staff, my patient base, or I got to hire one from the outside. But the most important thing is they have to be able to perform, and this even applies with a family member. I've seen people get themselves in trouble like this. They bring in a brother, and the brother's just not very capable as a manager, and it doesn't work out, which makes things worse. So what do I want to make sure of? Because that can strain relationships to a degree. I want to make sure they have some basic qualities if I'm going to put them on as manager before I actually say, hey, yeah, this is the direction that they're headed. And there's a lot of things I'd look for, but there are 7 basic qualities I'd look for that I'll give you that can kind of get you started. So let's say I have somebody that's a prospective office manager. What's the first most important thing? I want to make sure that they are highly productive. They can work. If it's somebody who's currently on my staff, I have hopefully some type of stats to measure their productivity. Let's say I have a treatment coordinator and they just light it up. They can collect money till the end of time. They're just amazing. Well, that person has proven to me they can work. Or I have a dental assistant who's just amazing and just kills it and works like crazy. Okay, this person's a good prospect then. They've checked that box, so to speak. How would I apply that with a family member? Maybe they're in another industry and they're very competent. And I see that they're very competent. And, you know, obviously if it's a spouse, you know this person, you know that whether they're capable of working or not. But I don't want somebody to come in and be allergic to work because that's the last thing you want in a manager. That's the first thing. So they have to be highly productive. Second thing is I want them to be driven. I want to make sure that they are actually driven. How do I know somebody's actually driven? They're looking for more, but they've associated that more with something that they are going to have to do. So if somebody comes into me and they say, yes, I would like $200,000 a year. I'm like, well, what are you going to do for that $200,000? Well, I'm very experienced. So you need to pay me $200,000. That's sort of the wrong viewpoint. If someone comes in and they go, okay, you're going to pay me X amount of dollars. Now, look, when we get it up to here, can I make this? And when we get up to here, can I make that? When we get it up to here, can I make that? I would like to have the practice doing 5 times what it's doing now. That's driven. I want somebody who's driven to expand and build the business. I'm not looking for somebody who's just looking to do time. They have to be driven. They have to be not only in for the practice, but for themselves. They want to expand themselves. They want to learn, etc., and become more capable themselves. So that's the second quality. Third quality, and again, you're not going to know this unless you've worked with the person or have some experience with them, they have to have at least shown some ability to get compliance. Obviously, if I had a schedule coordinator or a treatment coordinator, they're getting compliance from patients. Same thing with a dental assistant might be getting various types of compliance with post-op instructions and things like this. Maybe you have a lead assistant and they're running other assistants and they're ordering them around to do various things, and they get those people to comply. So they're not afraid of telling people what to do. And more importantly than telling people what to do, people actually do it. So again, lead assistant, I have 3 assistants working for them. They run those assistants very efficiently. Those assistants seem to be in pretty good spirits, and that lead assistant is doing a great job. Okay, they've shown me they have the capability to get compliance. They're a hard worker. They're driven. Okay, we're starting to check some boxes here, which show me this person has a potential to become a decent manager. Next point, or point number 4, is they make things work. They solve problems, in many cases, without my involvement. And I have a funny viewpoint on this. So let's say, this is just for me. Let's say I have a junior, someone who directly reports to me, and they run into some type of a situation or problem that they might normally ask me about, but they can't. They just can't. And again, I know especially in healthcare, you might have certain decisions that require you ask the doctor, so I'm not saying not to do that. Okay, let's say it's organizational, all right? It's just so we keep ourselves out of that mess. But, in other words, this is a problem they normally ask me about, but they can't. They have to figure it out on their own. I prefer and respect the person taking some initiative, even if they get it wrong, than not taking any initiative at all. Like they did nothing about it and they were waiting for me to show up. I don't like that. I would prefer they tried to do something about it, and maybe their solution isn't the exact solution I would have picked, but they were willing to take the responsibility and solve the problem before it became a problem for me. So you walk into the office and you have a schedule coordinator, and before that morning, without you even knowing it, you had a huge blowout on your schedule. Your schedule would have been wrecked. They figured out how to solve the problem. They did it. You walk in and they go, doctor, okay, so here's what happened, blah, 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 so we're going to do this instead, rack. Maybe it's not exactly what you would have done, but they attempted to solve the problem and it wasn't a bad solution. That's a really good indicator to me. This person takes initiative. They're solving problems. They're not giving to me to solve, which leads to the next point, which is accountability and responsibility. Point number 5, they own their job. So they're responsible. They don't blame. They don't avoid accountability. So I have a schedule coordinator that had that big opening. They could not solve it and go, well, I confirmed that patient, and that patient said they were going to be here and they weren't here and blah, blah, blah. So I did what I was supposed to do. To me, that's not really owning the job. The scheduler job is they're supposed to produce a productive schedule. Well, the schedule is not productive regardless of who is confirmed or not, so what are you doing about it? So again, this is where I'd rather they were taking some accountability and some initiative to solve that problem before they did it. Now, let's say I had somebody who took no initiative like this. Everything I was asked about, can I do this, can I do that? I'm asked to solve all the problems and they take zero initiative. I would never make that person my manager, because that's not what I wanted a manager. You're wanting a manager to operate more or less autonomously. Sure, you're running your manager, but they have to be able to think, and they're going to have other people coming to them that they have to run. So if they can't even take initiative for their own individual job, there is no way they're going to be able to manage other people. Or if they do, they're not going to do a great job at it. Which brings us to point number 6. The person has to be smart. They actually have to be smart. They have to be able to solve problems, all right? Now, there's different ways you can check this or whatever. I don't know what's okay and what's not from an employment perspective. I know some people administer testing of some kind, not for hiring, but for placement. You don't ever test to hire, but you test for placement. But I want to make sure that the person can solve problems. And then the last point is they have to have the ability to learn. Now, this one's important. This is one of the more important ones. They have to have the ability to learn, and they have to show that they can apply what they've learned. The ability to learn, and they can show that they've applied what they've learned. Because let's say we've learned how to do some new type of procedure or some new way of setting up the room or some new way of collecting money. Number 1, did they learn it? And then can they do it? If they can't do what they learned, assuming the system that they learned was useful and effective, then how am I going to teach them anything else? This is sort of something you could see when you're training anybody. If you bring somebody in to be a receptionist and you spent 20, 30 times correcting them on how to answer the phone, it's probably not going to work because they can't get the basics in place. If you can't teach them how to say, it's a great day at ABC Dental, my name is Jeff, I can help you, they can't do that. How are you going to teach them more complex things? They have trouble learning. So if a person has trouble learning or they have no desire to learn, and this, some people learn slow and some people learn fast. Not as important to me. I want them to be decent at learning. They can't be super slow, but they can be at a good average clip, but they have to show that they can learn. They don't have to be the smartest person in the world, but they can learn and they can apply what it is that they're learning. And they have to want to learn. What's dangerous is you hire somebody as your manager and they go, oh, I've been a manager for 10 years and there's really nothing else I can learn. I know everything there is to know about dentistry. You go, okay, well, we want to learn how to do this. Oh, I don't need to do that. I already know how to do that. I have a better way to do that. That to me is dangerous. If someone cannot at least look at something, maybe they do have a better way, but if they can't at least look at what you're telling them to do and go, oh, yeah, well, that's not a bad idea, but here's how I do it, and you can see why it's better, fine. But if they can't even look at it and are unwilling to look, unwilling to learn, that's also dangerous because you want somebody who wants to expand and is driven, and if they don't want to learn, they're going to have trouble expanding and being driven themselves. And look, those are the 7 basic things I'm looking for. Obviously, there are other qualities, but these are the basic ones. These are the key qualities. And keep in mind, if they have these key qualities, so I got my candidate, they have these key qualities, I still have to train them. I know I'm going to have to train them. I expect to train them. I mean, half the MGE Power Program is training for an office manager. But I want somebody who has that raw ability and talent, and with that training, I'm going to turn them into a proper, effective executive that can really run the business. That's the combo. Where it doesn't work is I have somebody with raw talent with no knowledge, or I have somebody who doesn't have the raw talent. Maybe they hate being executive, they don't like dealing with people, and then I give them that knowledge. Both of those combos aren't going to work. I need raw talent and knowledge. Now I have an excellent executive. And now I have somebody who can actually really run my business. And this is key because, I've brought up on other episodes how the dental landscape is changing, especially with practice ownership. There's going to be a lot of extra practices for sale over the next 5 to 10 years. And if you're in that, era of your career where you're thinking, gee, I'd like to pick up a second, third, or fourth location, you need a killer executive that you are working with, a real manager who can help you find other people for the team to help you build these other offices. If you don't have that manager in place, you really don't have a foundation from which to expand or build on. So this is why the manager becomes all the more important. Your future, I'm not going to say is dependent on it, but I'll tell you, if you want to have the type of career and practice that you really want, it's an important thing, and I will tell you these people are out there. And if you have somebody who's in a lot of cases, someone's a prospective OM and they think there's no earning power in it or whatever. I know office managers who make 6 figures. They do really well. There's no reason they can't. And if you had a manager who took your practice from $100,000 to $600,000 a month, you'd probably be happy to pay them well. That's the whole point. These people do exist. They may not be where you think they are, or they may be in places that you hadn't even thought about, like family, patients, or maybe even currently on your team. Anyway, so there you have it. I know I'm saying it again. You need a manager. I can't say it enough. In my opinion, it does make all the difference. Let's make 2026 the year that you level up and you get a real OM if you don't already have one. Trust me, you're going to be happy that you did. I hope this helps. Don't forget, on the episode webpage, we have that download for the Office Manager Daily Checklist, as well as the link to the MGE Power Program so you can find out more. If you want to find out more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week, and we'll see you the next episode.